Alrighty, hello everybody. Dr. P in the house. We are coming to you live for our midday life coaching, and I am going to do this just a little bit differently. For the past couple of days, I've been like up here and I've been diagramming stuff and writing stuff out, and today I just want to have a conversation. So over the past, I guess probably 2.5, 3 weeks, I don't know, it's like we're on day 897 of our self-isolation. And we are, it was really interesting. And that was very strange. we are, we I was so I would this is actually where I want to start, Facebook being weird or otherwise. I was talking with one of the people I coached today, and we were doing a coaching call, and she was talking about she runs she does a lot of intercultural awareness stuff, and she reminded me of something that I learned actually when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. So in my 20s, I was a Peace Corps volunteer, and I went to Jordan. I was in the Middle East in 1997, so before 9/11. And before I went, they did a lot of work on intercultural stuff, because we were going to a completely new culture. That's the point of the Peace Corps, right? And one of the things they said is that you're going to have a honeymoon period of like falling in love with what's going on, okay? And then the culture shock is going to hit. And she pointed out that we are about 3 weeks into the craziness, and schools getting canceled, and social distancing, and quarantine, and self-isolation, and that sort of thing. And the culture shock is going to hit. And I have found that to be absolutely incredibly true, okay? Most of us, high-functioning people, can get through an awful lot of stuff, and we do get through an awful lot of stuff. But around week 3, our emotional energy just goes kaplooey, okay? And I found that this weekend, and I was talking after I did this coaching call yesterday. I had my own coaching call, because of course the best coaches have coaches, right? And I was talking with her, and I was like, it was so strange this weekend. I haven't had a drink since January, and I wanted a drink worse than anything this weekend. And I haven't had the urge for a drink. I haven't wanted anything. Okay. Until this weekend, and I was sitting and I was eating popcorn with my kids, and I wanted a beer. And then on Sunday, Andrew and I were having like tapas, which we do, and I pretty desperately wanted a Cosmo. And I was like, I haven't wanted to day drink in forever, and it was so weird. And I think one of the things that is happening is that we are all kind of settling into this new reality, that we might be home for a while. I mean, my kids are home for another month, and there are states around us where they're extending home until the beginning of May. And the kids are flipping out, and and everybody around me, I know their kids are flipping out. And the question is how are we going to deal with that? And so on today's coaching, the question is, are you going to use alcohol to deal with that? And it's not good or bad. Okay, I want to point out it's not good or bad. The reason I stopped drinking, okay, is because I can't sleep. And my body stopped being able to process alcohol. That didn't used to be the case. I would be able to have a beer or two. I never really drank all that much, but I'd have a Cosmo, or I'd have like a Manhattan. My husband makes great Manhattans, and I would have a Manhattan, and the sleep was never a problem until like maybe not even quite a year. And I started noticing that if I drank, I couldn't sleep. And for those of you who know me, sleep is my number one priority. And so I started cutting back on my alcohol. And I started cutting back to I only drank on the weekends. I would only drink when I was traveling. So I'd have a beer on, like I fly first class most of the time because I have to like get to my clients boots on the ground and be ready. Um, and so I would have a drink on the plane. And I had been backing off to that. And then I eventually just stopped it over, I think, Martin Luther King Day weekend this year. And when we started having a conversation about alcohol, and we started having a conversation about what that looks like in our society, and you're interested in engaging in that conversation, I think now is a great time to engage in that conversation. Because of the many things I learned in the Peace Corps, one of the things I really learned how to do was drink. The only time I have ever been absolutely completely plastered was when I was a Peace Corps volunteer. And there's a whole range of conversation that we can have around alcohol and how we want to use it in our lives. And I'm inviting you into that conversation right now. And I'm inviting you into that conversation because wine o'clock doesn't have to be a thing. Wine o'clock can be a planned thing. And the question is what's the relationship that you want to have with alcohol? Because how we do one thing is how we do everything. And if in our being inside and being with our families all the time and being confined, you find yourself wanting to drink more than you have, and you find yourself actually drinking more than you have, now's a great time to have that conversation, because our reality is such right now that we are in a space that we get to have that conversation. Okay, a lot of people are not going to work, and a lot of people are sitting at home with their kids in a way that they haven't been with their kids or been with their spouse, and we sort of habitually turn to drinking around that. And my journey with understanding drinking and deciding to not drink, as somebody who really likes the taste of alcohol, like there are a lot of people who engage in the stop over drinking program, as my coach calls it, and they're like, alcohol tastes terrible. Dude, I'm a foodie. Alcohol tastes good to me. I like beer. I like how it tastes. I like how wine tastes. I like how wine tastes with food. But the question is what's the bargain that you create? Okay, and so the bargain stopped being worth it for me. And where I started with that conversation is really tuning into my body. And it started with a conversation with, I think, one of my peer coaches a little more than a year ago, where I was like, I wonder why I have a Manhattan at night. This is probably maybe 18 months ago. I wonder why I have a Manhattan at night. And I realized what would happen is I would get done with work at the office, because I had a separate office last year that I gave up this year. And I would drive home and I would find myself wondering, what am I going to walk into? And I would feel so overwhelmed by what am I going to walk into, because I felt like I couldn't handle my life. I couldn't handle the chaos of 3 kids. I couldn't handle like just all the things that went on. The house is a mess, and dinner needs to be made, and the kids need to get to bed, and I need to get some sleep, and I need. You hear that language? I need. And I would walk and I would be like, oh, but Andrew's going to make me a Manhattan and it's going to be really good. And so I would reward myself before I even had the Manhattan in the car thinking about Andrew making me a Manhattan. And I would exhale and relax. Okay. And then by the time I got home, I would be much more relaxed. Okay. And then I would be concentrating on my Manhattan. All right. And so I would be so worried. I would be worried about, you know, interacting with the kids, but when I was concentrating on my Manhattan and trying to enjoy my Manhattan, I wasn't actually interacting with my kids, right? And I started recognizing in myself that my thought was, I'm going to be able to relax when I get home with a Manhattan. And I thought it was the Manhattan that was allowing me to relax. And I felt more relaxed when I thought that thought and the thought really was Andrew's making me a Manhattan. And that thought was really relaxing. And so I would relax. And I thought it was Manhattan that made me relax when I hit home and got into the kitchen, and Andrew handed me a drink. Hi, honey, welcome home. Here's your drink. How very 50s of us. But the truth is it was my thought about the Manhattan. It's not the Manhattan itself. And when I teased out that I actually started relaxing when I was in my car 2 or 3 streets away, like a couple of miles away, was when the relaxation started. I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's not the alcohol that's making me relax. It's my thoughts about the alcohol that are making me relax. Because remember, it's always our thoughts that create our results. And I started teasing that out. And I didn't stop drinking immediately. I just started noticing my body and my body's reaction. And when I started relaxing, and I left a note for myself in the car that said, what does it look like to relax right now? Okay. And think a new, relaxing thought. I live in a beautiful, beautiful section of the country. My closest intersection to get out of here and get, either into Portland or over to my mom's or into town or whatever. I mean, my heart breaks with the beauty of the intersection of Wynn and Range Road in Cumberland, Maine, every time I get the opportunity to experience that intersection. There's an old schoolhouse, there is a farm on 3 of the corners, two different farms on 3 different corners. And the sun rises beautifully over there, and it looks beautiful in the setting sun. And I pretty much decided to fall in love with that intersection even harder than I had, and notice the changing of the fields and the changing of the farms, and allow myself the capacity to have the beauty of my space in my life to relax me. And then I would get home and I would be able to say, hey, do I want a Manhattan? Or am I okay without it? And I was able to start, because I was able to make that choice, I could start tying my drinking to how I slept that night. Okay? And again, sleep is my #1 priority. And when I started tying my drinking to how I slept that night and whether or not I would be up all night, tossing and turning from the booze. Chemically, I don't know what happened in my body, but I know when I drink, I don't sleep. I started cutting back on the alcohol because it was actually pretty easy. And I remember coming home from work one day and I was like, Andrew, I can't believe after the day I had, I really don't even want a Manhattan. I really don't even want a Manhattan. And he's like, that's really super interesting. And you got to remember, alcoholism runs in our family, in his family, in my family. It's and I think that's true of a lot of us. And I just started noticing that I didn't want to drink. And I started letting that be okay. It is not always okay to not want to drink in the cultures I walk around in the places where I am. Chefs and foodies would be a pretty hard drinking crowd. I was an Army officer, hard drinking crowd. Peace Corps volunteers, hard drinking crowd. All right. And so what that means is tolerating discomfort. Okay. We use alcohol in our society, and we use cannabis to some extent to make discomfort easier to tolerate. Okay. I used alcohol to make my family life easier to tolerate because I had thoughts that my family life was difficult to tolerate. Right? Because I am human. and we always, it's super easy to think things should be different than they actually are. Things shouldn't be different than they actually are. And if you read my email, if you're not on my email list, you should definitely go to sfbdi.com and fill out the pop-up form and get on the email list, because I talked about things being different than they are. But quoted Byron Katie today. But things are the way that they are. And the question is who do you want to be, and how do you want to be when things are the way that they are? And in my drinking journey and in my stopping over drinking and deciding that what over drinking meant to me, and over drinking meant to me drinking not when I planned to drink and giving in to the urge to drink. And that urge always came from thoughts like, I deserve this. I've had a really hard day. All right. And then I would always say, it's okay, I don't drink much. Like, I always told myself that. I really don't drink much. Because I really didn't. I'm Lord Almighty, I don't think in my whole life I've ever finished off a bottle of wine in one sitting, which I talked to some other stopover drinking folks, and they're like, oh yeah, a bottle of wine a night. And I was like, really? Right? And so over drinking is a very personal thing. There are people who can have a glass of wine a night and that is not over drinking. That would be completely over drinking for me, right? And so the question is are you able to tune into yourself well enough to understand what is and is not over drinking for you? And if you're interested in engaging in this conversation, that's that tuning in process. And the way I talk about it, and the way I talked about it with my coach when I brought this to coaching yesterday was, oh, right, I'm developing the capability to understand my relationship with alcohol. That's all, right? I mean, how many, and all the drug and alcohol education that we all got, hello, Gen Xer, child of the 80s and 90s, just say no. Sure, that's one way of developing a relationship with alcohol, but it's not a particularly mature way, nor would I say, given the levels of addiction we have in the United States, was it a particularly effective way, and I'm pretty sure there's an awful lot of addiction data to back me up on that. But what does it look like to have an emotionally intelligent conversation about your relationship with alcohol? And that's all stop over drinking is. That's all it is understanding what's the relationship with alcohol that I have, and what's the relationship with alcohol that I want, and how am I bridging that gap? What am I developing the capabilities around? Okay? And I chose to go on a stop over drinking journey because, one, I wanted to sleep better. Again, sleep very important. Two, I was frankly curious if it had all of that much effect on my weight. Okay, because I was losing weight at the time. And I was wondering how much of an effect alcohol had on my weight, and I got to experiment, and it was really quite fascinating. I can drink plenty of hard liquor if I can tolerate the not sleeping. I can drink hard liquor and not gain weight, but beer, which is my favorite thing to drink, weight gain city. I was like, okay, so if I drink a beer, I'm not sleeping and I'm gaining weight. I guess I'm giving up beer. And that is, in fact, the last thing I gave up was beer. That was the last drink I had half a can of beer. And I was like, I'm just done. I am just done. But it was because I came from a space of choice. And I came from a space of curiosity. And I came from a space of giving myself room to understand my own body and understand my own reactions and who I am, not from a space of just say no. I mean, anytime we're in that sort of denial, whether it's food or it's alcohol or you like cutting off social media, like cutting off social media this week, anytime you do that, you're going to come from a space of denial and emotional energy. And folks, if you've been doing that over the past 3 weeks, my guess is your emotional energy is pretty much kaput right now. And it is about this week where you are certainly willing to start engaging in thoughts and actions of eating yourself out of house and home and going and drinking all the booze. Ask me how I know this. It's because I have been managing those urges for a couple 4 days now, and urges that, I mean, I really thought I had conquered. I'm not gonna lie, I really thought I had conquered, and I hadn't. I just hadn't. And the reason, there's no big old reason other than I had situations this weekend that put me in nostalgic frames of mind. And that it's pretty easy to want alcohol. Alcohol makes us feel pretty good. It's pretty easy to want simple carbohydrates. They make us feel really fairly good. And we often feel like we deserve it. But those thoughts around we deserve it and it's easy and it should be easy are some of the most destructive thoughts we have. Okay? And I deserve a drink is one of those thoughts that feels super benign. It feels, you put in a hard day's work and the entirety of society is going to tell you I deserve a drink. That's an optional thought. And maybe all you want to do right now is say, I see you thought, I hear you thought, and that may or may not be true. And then decide what you're going to drink. And just decide 24 hours in advance. It's like the food. We decide what are, 24 hours in advance. What am I having for breakfast? What am I having for lunch? What am I having for dinner or snacks or whatever it is that you decide that you're eating? And alcohol is the same way. And you know that you are using your forebrain to make those decisions if you are making them 24 hours in advance. If you are deciding on the spot that you're going to have a glass of wine at the end of the day, you're not using your forebrain to make that decision. And it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing to notice about where you are on your journey with alcohol, okay? And how are you developing your capabilities around alcohol? And do you want to develop your capabilities around alcohol or whatever substance it is that you use to escape the reality of your life? Right? I mean, yesterday we talked about food, today we talked about alcohol, and tomorrow we're talking about work. Because that's how the vast majority of us do it. Okay, the vast majority of folks do escape the reality that we have. Excuse me. Escape the reality we have by one of those 3 ways. Okay, overworking, overdrinking, and overeating. So that's what I talk about because that's the journey that I'm on. Other coaches talk about other things, but me and my clients, those are the conversations that we have. And so if you're in that conversation, looking at those urges, it means acknowledging, hey, I'm going to have an urge. I'm going to start looking, because immediately what's going to happen is, if you say, okay, I'm going to set myself a protocol for alcohol, okay, and I'm going to have a drink a night, or I'm going to only drink on the weekends, or I'm going to not drink before 2, or whatever it is you decide to do, when I've done all those things, your body is immediately going to argue with you, and your brain is going to say, no, we don't like constraint. We don't like constraint. This is not good. Things are very, very bad. And you should not do it this way. You should listen to me, okay? And your brain is like a toddler with a knife, okay? We would never allow our toddlers to run around with a knife. At least I would hope you not let your toddler run around with a knife, okay? And we don't let our brain run around with a knife because your hind brain says, but we feel really, really good when the alcohol hits us. It feels really, really good. But it's your forebrain that feels really, really bad. And what is the good or bad that you want to tolerate, okay? Because there is discomfort in not drinking. There is discomfort in saying, I really want to have a beer right now, and I'm not going to have one because I know if I have one, I'm not going to sleep tonight. And I'm going to remember why I decided I wasn't drinking. but there is discomfort there. It doesn't feel good, okay? What feels good is the level of imagination and contribution and service that I have been in since I gave up drinking. I can point to you, and I'm sure in a year I will be able to point to that weekend where I gave up drinking, surrounded by veterans who were drinking, as a pivotal point in my entrepreneurial journey and in my journey of understanding myself. Okay, because I stopped thinking of alcohol and stopped using alcohol as a way to shield me from the fear of feeling intense emotions. If you can decide that you're willing to tolerate the discomfort of intense emotions and feel all of your own feelings, your drinking will decrease because your reasons for drinking will decrease. If you start developing your capacity to have intense emotions, okay, your self-regulation around urges to get away from those intense emotions will create new pathways. Your self-regulation will improve. You will develop, as we say, the capacity to have intense emotions. And to be human is to have intense emotions. And you can either decide to work or eat or drink or play Nintendo or whatever it is that you do, or you can have those intense emotions. But you're going to have the intense emotions anyway, and they are going to come out at some point. And they are going to come out in negative ways unless you make a different choice. All right. And a journey with alcohol is all about teaching you about a different choice and figuring out what you can learn about yourself. And we have the opportunity right now to learn something new about ourselves. This is really, truly the perfect opportunity to understand who you want to be and how you want to be in the world. And if choosing a new and more intentioned path around alcohol is what you need and what you want to do, that's how to do it. And everything that I went over here, and just start thinking about your thoughts about alcohol. All right, so that's what we got for coaching today. We're at the bottom of the hour. I will be back tomorrow, and I will be talking about work and overworking and what overworking looks like, so that y'all can understand how that reality looks. I will tell you a story about what my kids told me last night, which kind of broke my heart. But that's what I got for you today. All of these are archived over on the YouTube channel, and if you haven't already liked and subscribed or whatever that is over on the YouTube channel, if you could go do that, I would surely appreciate it, because I think as soon as we hit 100 subscribers, I get to name the YouTube channel. So go look for Dirigo Food Safety on YouTube. Give us a subscription, and I'll be able to name the YouTube channel. That'd be super helpful. All right, you are all amazing, and I will see you tomorrow at noon. Bye all.